The Vorzak Empire ruled the Milky Way for over 3,000 years. Their warships were the strongest. Their weapons were the most deadly. Their soldiers were the most feared. They went from planet to planet, taking over every world they found. Any alien race that tried to grow too powerful was quickly crushed. The Vorzaks made sure no one could ever challenge them. Humans, however, knew nothing about the Vorzaks or their empire. Earth had just begun to reach for the stars. They had built small colonies on Mars and a few moons around Jupiter and Saturn. Their ships were getting faster and going farther each year. People on Earth still argued about money and borders, but they worked together in space. They were young and hopeful, and they had no idea what waited for them among the stars. Commander. Frank Harris stood tall on the bridge of the USS Horizon. The ship was Earth's newest and best long-distance explorer. Harris had black hair with touches of gray at the temples. His blue eyes were fixed on the main screen, which showed the Tau Ceti star system growing larger as they approached. Navigator, how long until we reach the third planet, he asked. Lisa Gordon checked her screens. About 6 hours, sir. We're picking up that strange signal more clearly now. That signal was why they had traveled so far. 3 weeks ago, Earth's deep space listening posts had caught something unusual from Tau Ceti. It wasn't random space noise. It had patterns that suggested it came from thinking beings. First contact. The words gave Harris a chill. Humans had wondered for centuries if they were alone in the universe. Now they might finally have their answer. Keep all sensors at full power, Harris ordered. I want to know everything about that planet before we get there. As the horizon moved closer, the crew grew more excited. The signal was definitely artificial. The planet looked a lot like Earth. Blue oceans, green and brown land masses, white clouds. It could support human life. But something was wrong. Commander, I'm picking up signs of massive destruction on the surface, said Science Officer Paul Wright. His voice was tight with worry. Many large cities appear to be in ruins. Harris frowned. How recent? Very recent, sir. Some areas are still burning. The crew fell silent. Their excitement turned to dread. Approach with caution, Harris said. Shields up, weapons on standby. The horizon entered orbit around Tau Ceti 3. The view screen showed a world in ruins. Once great cities lay broken and burning. Huge craters marked the land where powerful weapons had struck. The oceans near the shorelines were dark with ash and debris. Life signs? Harris asked. Wright checked his instruments. Very few, sir. Scattered. Most are deep underground. Try to make contact, Harris ordered. Let them know we're here to help. It took hours before anyone answered their calls. When they finally did, the voice was filled with fear. Are you with the Vorzak? The voice asked in broken English. They must have been listening to Earth's broadcast for years to learn the language. No, Harris replied. We are humans from Earth. We mean you no harm. What happened here? There was a long pause. If you truly are not Vorzak, come to these coordinates. Come unarmed or we will think you are lying. Harris knew it was a risk, but he had to learn what happened. He took a small shuttle down to the surface with Officer Wright and 2 security team members. They landed near what once must have been a beautiful city. Now it was just broken buildings and ash. 3 thin humanoid aliens waited for them. They had pale blue skin and large, dark eyes that showed great sadness. They were clearly afraid but also desperate. I am Jalorn, said the tallest one. We are the Cetians, or what's left of us. What happened here? Harris asked, looking at the destruction around them. The Vorzak happened, Jalorn said, his voice bitter. They rule this part of the galaxy. They destroy any civilization they think might one day challenge them. But why? Wright asked. What did your people do to them? We existed, Jalorn said, simply. We were beginning to test faster-than-light communication. That was enough for them. They've been doing this for thousands of years to hundreds of species. Harris felt cold. How many Cetians survived? Maybe 10,000, Jalorn said. Out of billions. Harris struggled to understand the scale of the disaster. We need to document this. The people of Earth need to know what happened here. Jalorn led them to an underground shelter where survivors huddled together. Children cried softly. Wounded people lay on makeshift beds. The place smelled of fear and grief. One older Cedian approached them. "You must leave," he said urgently. "The Vorzak always come back to check for survivors. If they find you here, they will learn about Earth." "We can help you," Harris offered. "We can take some of you back to Earth." "No," Jalorn said firmly. "You don't understand. The Vorzak leave no witnesses. Ever. If they learn about Earth, they will come for you too." Before Harris could respond, Wright's communicator beeped loudly. "Commander," he said, his face pale. "The horizon is detecting multiple ships entering the system." "Vorzak," Jalorn whispered. "They've returned sooner than we expected." "We need to get back to our ship," Harris said. "It's too late," Jalorn told him. "Your ship is already in danger. The Vorzak will destroy it when they find it." Harris made a quick decision. "Wright, contact the horizon. Tell them to gather all the information they can about these Vorzak ships and transmit it back to Earth immediately. Then they need to attempt to escape." "What about us, sir?" Wright asked. "We'll stay and learn as much as we can," Harris said grimly. "Earth needs to know what's coming." Above them in orbit, the USS Horizon tried to hide behind one of Tau Ceti III's moons. But the Vorzak sensors were too advanced. 3 massive battleships, each one 10 times the size of the human vessel, moved to surround it. On the bridge, Acting Commander Olivia Ross made the final call. "Send everything we have. All sensor data, all communications with the surface team. Send it all to Earth now." The Horizon's communications officer worked furiously, sending the vital information across the vast distance to Earth. The transmission included everything they had learned about the Vorzak, their ships, their weapons, their tactics. The Vorzak ships opened fire. The Horizon's shields failed almost instantly under the assault, but they managed to complete the transmission before the ship exploded in a bright flash of light and energy. On the surface, Harris saw the flash in the sky. He knew what it meant. "Did your ship get a message out?" Jalorn asked quietly. "I hope so," Harris replied. "Because if they didn't, Earth has no idea what's coming." In the days that followed, Harris and his remaining crew learned everything they could from the Cedians. They recorded the Vorzak ships coming and going. They documented Cedian technology that might help Earth. They prepared for the worst. 2 weeks later, Harris watched as the Vorzak ships finally left the system, apparently satisfied that no threats remained. But he knew the truth. The Vorzak now knew about Earth, and they would be coming. Far away on Earth, the Horizon's final transmission arrived. It went directly to the highest levels of government. And for the first time, humanity learned they were not alone in the universe, and that the universe was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The clock was ticking. The Vorzak were coming. And Earth needed to prepare. Lauren Powell sat at her desk in the Space Defense Headquarters, her face pale as she watched the transmission from the USS Horizon for the 5th time. The images of destroyed cities on Tau Ceti III filled her with dread. Commander Harris's final words still rang in her ears. "The Vorzak are coming. Earth needs to prepare." Powell had been director of space defense for only 8 months. She was 45 years old with short brown hair and a reputation for staying calm in a crisis. But nothing in her career had prepared her for this. She pressed a button on her desk. "Get me Admiral Blackwood. Now." 30 minutes later, Powell sat in the White House Situation Room with the most powerful people on Earth. President Helen Garcia looked grim as she studied the images from Tau Ceti. "How much time do we have?" she asked. Admiral Joe Blackwood stood up. He was a tall man with a weathered face who had served in the Space Forces for 30 years. "Based on the data from the Horizon, the Vorzak scout ships could reach our system in 3 months. Their main fleet might be 6 months behind them." "And what are our chances against them?" the president asked. "With our current technology?" Blackwood shook his head. "None. Their smallest ships could destroy our entire fleet in minutes. The room fell silent. Powell watched as the reality sank in for everyone present. "There must be something we can do," said Defense Secretary William Clark. "Actually, there might be." All eyes turned to a woman sitting quietly at the end of the table. Dr. Samantha Winters was the head of Advanced Weapons Division. She was in her late 50s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. The Horizon sent more than just warnings. They also transmitted technical data from the Cedians. She pulled up new images on the screen. The Cedians had developed shield technology that the Vorzak weren't familiar with. They just didn't have time to build enough of them before the attack. "Can we make them?" President Garcia asked. "Maybe," Dr. Winters said. "But we'd need every scientist and engineer on the planet working together. And we'd need to start now." The president stood up. "Then that's what we'll do. As of this moment, I'm declaring a global emergency. All nations must cooperate. All resources must be shared. Humanity's survival depends on it." Over the next few weeks, the world changed. Governments told their people the truth. Deadly aliens were coming, and Earth needed to prepare. At first, there was panic. Some people didn't believe it. Some thought it was a trick. But when the governments showed the evidence from the horizon, most people understood the danger was real. Factories around the world stopped making cars and phones and started making parts for spaceships and weapons. Scientists from different countries shared their secrets. Old enemies became allies against a common threat. Powell worked 20 hours a day coordinating the global defense effort. Her office walls were covered with plans and diagrams. One day, Admiral Blackwood found her asleep at her desk. "You need to rest," he told her as she jerked awake. "No time," she mumbled, reaching for her coffee. "The Vorzak won't wait for us. To be ready." "We're making progress," Blackwood said. "Dr. Winters says the shield prototypes are working. And look at this." He showed her images of massive shipyards in orbit around Earth. New warships were being built using the Cedian technology. They were unlike anything humans had built before. "Will it be enough?" Powell asked. Blackwood's face was serious. "I don't know, but I'm not giving up without a fight." 2 months later, the first Vorzak scout ships entered the outer solar system. Powell watched from the new Space Defense Command Center, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The center was filled with screens showing the positions of Earth's new defense fleet. "They're scanning the system," reported Officer Eric Davis. "Can they detect our ships?" Powell asked. "I don't think so," said Dr. Winters, who stood nearby. "We've kept them powered down and hidden just as we planned." The strategy was simple but desperate. Make Earth look undefended. Make the Vorzak think they would face no resistance. Let them get close, then strike when they least expected it. For 2 weeks, the Vorzak scouts moved through the solar system. They scanned Mars, where human colonies had been evacuated and disguised to look abandoned. They examined the moons of Jupiter, where Earth's largest shipyards were hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids. They found nothing. Finally, the scouts approached Earth itself. Powell held her breath as they scanned the planet. "They're sending transmissions back to their main fleet," Davis reported. "What should we do?" "Nothing," Blackwood said firmly. "Let them think we're easy prey." After 3 days, the scout ships left the solar system. Earth sensors tracked them, jumping to faster-than-light speed, heading back toward Vorzak space. "They took the bait," Blackwood said with a grim smile. "Now we have about 4 months before their main fleet arrives." Those 4 months were the busiest in human history. More ships were built. More weapons were created. Soldiers and pilots trained day and night to use the new technology. Every day, Dr. Winters and her team made improvements based on the Cedian designs. Powell rarely saw sunlight. She moved between underground command centers, checking on progress, solving problems, pushing everyone to work faster. The fate of humanity rested on being ready when the Vorzak returned. 3 months after the scouts left, Earth's long-range sensors detected movement. A massive fleet was gathering near the edge of the solar system. Over 300 Vorzak warships, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. "They're here early," Powell said, her heart sinking. "But we're ready. Blackwood replied, his voice steady. All ships are in position. Defense stations on the Moon and Mars are fully operational. The asteroid belt weapons are armed. Powell looked around the command center. Faces were tense, but determined. Humanity was about to face its greatest test. Send. The message to all commands, she ordered. Operation Horizon is now active. Across the solar system, hidden ships powered up their engines. Secret bases on the Moon and Mars activated their weapons. Earth's first line of defense against the alien threat was about to be revealed. The Vorzak fleet moved closer, their massive ships forming into attack formation. Their sensors showed an undefended Earth, just as the scouts had reported. They had no reason to be cautious. They had destroyed hundreds of worlds before. This would be no different. Supreme Commander Kazak stood on the bridge of his massive flagship. He was tall even for a Vorzak, with gray skin and cold yellow eyes. He had led the destruction of 17 civilizations personally. Prepare the bombardment, he ordered. Start with their largest cities. As the Vorzak fleet moved into position, around Earth, they didn't notice the small signals passing between the Moon, Mars, and the asteroid belt. They didn't detect the powered-down human ships hiding in orbit around Jupiter, waiting for the command to attack. Powell watched on the main screen as the Vorzak fleet spread out around Earth. Her hand hovered over the button that would start humanity's counterattack. May God help us all, she whispered, and pressed the button. Across the solar system, humanity's hidden defenses came to life. The trap was sprung. The fight for Earth had begun. Colonel Diana Mitchell stood in the command center of Lunar Base Alpha, watching as the Vorzak fleet moved into position around Earth. She was 42 years old with short blonde hair and a scar on her left cheek from a training accident years ago. She had spent the last 3 months preparing her troops for this moment. All weapons stations report ready, said her second-in-command, Major Greg Wilson. Mitchell nodded. Remember the plan. Wait for the signal from Earth Command. The signal came moments later. On every screen in the lunar base, the words flashed. Operation Horizon active. All batteries fire at will, Mitchell ordered, her voice calm despite the tension. Across the lunar surface, hidden weapon emplacements powered up. The Cetian shield technology had allowed humans to build weapons far more powerful than anything they had before. Energy beams shot out from dozens of locations, all targeting the surprised Vorzak ships. At the same time, defense bases on Mars activated their weapons. From the asteroid belt, small attack ships launched toward the Vorzak fleet. Earth's trap was sprung. In space, the Vorzak ships were caught completely by surprise. They had expected an easy victory against a primitive species. Instead, 27 of their largest warships were destroyed in the first attack. Supreme Commander Kazak stared at his tactical display in shock as his ships exploded around him. How is this possible? He demanded. The scouts reported no defenses. They have adapted Cetian technology, one of his officers replied, and they have hidden their forces well. Kazak's shock quickly turned to anger. Launch all fighters. Target their weapon emplacements on the Moon. Thousands of small Vorzak fighter ships poured out of the larger vessels, heading toward the lunar surface. But they faced a new surprise. From behind Jupiter's moons, the hidden human fleet finally moved. Leading them was the USS Defiant, Earth's first true battleship. It was smaller than the Vorzak vessels but faster, and equipped with the best weapons humans could build. Captain Alan Shepard stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching as his fleet of 100 ships moved into attack formation. He was a tall man with dark skin and serious eyes. He had been chosen to lead this mission because of his brilliant tactical mind. All ships engage as planned, he ordered. Remember the horizon. The human fleet used special engines based on Cetian designs. These engines allowed them to move, in ways the Vorzak had never seen before. They could change direction instantly and move at speeds that confused Vorzak targeting systems. The Defiant led the attack, moving straight toward the largest Vorzak ships. Its weapons fired constantly, targeting the weak points that Dr. Winters had identified from the Horizon's data. On Earth, Lauren Powell and Admiral Blackwood watched the battle from the Space Defense Command Center. The main screen showed the positions of all ships with human forces in blue and Vorzak in red. The number of red dots was slowly decreasing. "It's working," Powell said, hardly believing what she was seeing. "For now," Blackwood cautioned. "But they still outnumber us 3-1. The battle spread across the whole solar system. Vorzak. Ships tried to regroup, but human forces attacked from all sides. The Vorzak had never faced an enemy that fought like this before. For 3,000 years they had used the same tactics because they had always worked. Now those tactics were failing. On the lunar surface, Colonel Mitchell's forces were under heavy attack. Vorzak fighters bombed the weapon emplacements, trying to silence the deadly beams that were destroying their capital ships. "Sector 4 defenses are down," reported Major Wilson. "We're taking heavy damage." "Shift power to the shields," Mitchell ordered. "We need to hold out as long as possible." In space, Captain Shepard saw that the lunar defenses were in trouble. He made a quick decision. "All ships in Battle Group 2, move to protect the lunar installations," he ordered. "Battle Groups 1 and 3 continue the attack on their capital ships." The space around the moon became a chaotic battlefield. Human ships fought desperately against the more numerous Vorzak fighters. The vacuum filled with explosions and debris. 3 hours into the battle, the situation was becoming critical. Human forces had destroyed over 100 Vorzak ships, but they were taking losses too. The Mars defense bases were heavily damaged. Several ships in Shepard's fleet had been destroyed. In the command center on Earth, Powell received the reports with growing concern. "We can't keep this up much longer," she told Blackwood. The Admiral studied the tactical display. "We need to take out their command ship," he said. "If we can kill Kazak, it might throw their forces into disarray." Powell nodded. "But how? It's in the middle of their formation, heavily protected." "I have an idea," Blackwood said. He opened a channel to the Defiant. "Captain Shepard, new orders. Operation Spearhead is authorized." On the bridge of the Defiant, Shepard acknowledged the order. "Understood, Admiral. Operation Spearhead is go." He turned to his crew. "This is what we've trained for. Prepare the phase drive." The phase drive was the most advanced piece of technology humans had developed from the Cedian data. It allowed a ship to briefly shift out of normal space, becoming invisible to sensors and able to pass through solid objects. It was dangerous and used enormous power, but it might be their only chance. "All power to the phase drive," Shepard ordered. "Plot a course directly to the Vorzak command ship." The Defiant disappeared from all sensors. It moved straight through the Vorzak fleet, passing through ships and debris alike. When it reappeared, it was directly in front of Kazak's massive flagship. "Fire everything," Shepard ordered. All of the Defiant's weapons fired at once, concentrating on the command section of the Vorzak ship. The Vorzak shields, not designed to handle such a close attack, failed almost instantly. On his flagship, Supreme Commander Kazak felt the ship shake as the human weapons tore through it. "Impossible," he muttered as the bridge began to break apart around him. The Vorzak flagship exploded in a massive fireball. When the light faded, both it and the Defiant were gone, destroyed in the same blast. Across the solar system, the Vorzak forces saw their command ship destroyed. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they had lost their supreme leader in battle. Confusion spread through their ranks. The second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vrex, tried to take control, but it was too late. The human forces pressed their advantage, targeting the now disorganized Vorzak ships. After 5 hours of intense fighting, Vrex made the decision that would change Vorzak history forever. "All ships retreat," he ordered. "Jump to light speed and return to Imperial space." The surviving Vorzak ships, still over 100 strong, turned and fled from the solar system. The first battle for Earth was over. Humanity had won. In the command center, Powell watched as the red dots disappeared from the screen. Tears filled her eyes as she realized what they had achieved. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Admiral Blackwood nodded solemnly. "Yes, but at a high cost. And this is just the beginning. The Vorzak Empire spans half the galaxy. They will be back, and next time they won't underestimate us." Powell straightened her shoulders. Then we'll be ready for them, and we won't be fighting alone next time. As the human forces regrouped and began the work of repairing their damaged ships and bases, a new message arrived from deep space. It was not from the Vorzak. "Sir," said a communications officer, "we're receiving transmissions from multiple alien sources. They say they're from races that have been hiding from the Vorzak for generations. They want to talk." The war had just begun, but humanity was no longer alone in the fight. News of the Vorzak defeat spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. For 3,000 years, no one had beaten the Vorzak in battle. Now a young species from a small blue planet had done the impossible. Ambassador Victoria Reeves stood in the newly built Galactic Reception Center in Geneva, Switzerland. She was a tall woman with dark skin and gray hair that she wore in a simple style. At 58, she had spent most of her life as a diplomat, but nothing had prepared her for this. In front of her stood representatives from 7 different alien species. They had arrived in ships of various designs, all coming to Earth after hearing about the defeat of the Vorzak fleet. "Welcome to Earth," Reeves said, using the universal translator that Dr. Winters had developed based on Cetian technology. "We are honored by your presence." The tallest alien stepped forward. He had blue skin like the Cetians but with ridges on his forehead. "I am Zeril of the Aurelian Defense Force. For 500 years my people have hidden from the Vorzak in the shadows of gas giants. We watched as they destroyed our colonies one by one. Now we wish to fight alongside you." One by one, the other aliens introduced themselves. There were the Bren, small beings with 4 arms who excelled at building ships. The Krell were massive and strong, perfect soldiers for ground combat. The Navarre were thin with large eyes that could see energy patterns invisible to humans. Each species had been hiding from the Vorzak for generations. Each had lost worlds to their cruelty. "We will welcome any help you can offer," Reeves told them. "But you should know that the Vorzak will return. This was only their first attack." "We know," said Zeril. "That is why we are here. Together we might have a chance." In the weeks that followed, more alien ships arrived. Some brought refugees seeking safety. Others brought soldiers eager to join the fight. All brought knowledge about the Vorzak that could help in the coming battle. Admiral Blackwood worked with military leaders from 17 different species to form the first interstellar defense force in human history. They called it the Alliance Fleet. Dr. Winters collaborated with alien scientists, combining their technologies in ways no one had tried before. Each species developed different ways to fight the Vorzak, she explained to Powell during a briefing. The Aurelians created advanced shields. The Bren built faster engines. The Navarre developed sensors that can detect Vorzak ships from farther away. Together, we're creating weapons and defenses that are stronger than anything any single species could make. Powell nodded. "And how long until the Vorzak return?" "Based on what our new allies tell us, they're gathering a much larger fleet," Blackwood said. "Commander Zethtal of the Aurelian forces believes they will attack within a year." Commander Zethtal had quickly become Blackwood's most trusted advisor. He had fought against Vorzak scout ships for decades and understood their tactics better than anyone. "The Vorzak do not understand defeat," he warned during a strategy meeting. "They will return with everything they have. This time, they will not underestimate you." The Alliance worked day and night to prepare. New ships were built in orbiting shipyards, combining human engineering with alien technology. Defense bases on the Moon and Mars were rebuilt, stronger than before. The asteroid belt became a fortress line, filled with hidden weapons and sensors. On Earth, cities built deep shelters underground in case the Vorzak broke through the defenses. People trained for evacuation drills. Children learned about their new alien allies in school. The whole planet prepared for war. 6 months after the first battle, humanity celebrated the launch of its newest warship, the USS Intrepid. It was larger than the Defiant and incorporated technology from all the Alliance species. Admiral Blackwood would command it personally when the Vorzak returned. During the launch ceremony, Powell gave a speech to the combined human and alien crews. "A year ago, humanity did not know we were not alone in the universe. We did not know about the threat that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years. Today we stand united with our new friends and allies, ready to defend not just Earth, but all free worlds from the Vorzak Empire. The alien representatives cheered along, with the humans. For the first time in millennia, there was hope in the galaxy. As Powell predicted, intelligence soon revealed the Vorzak were gathering their forces. Alliance long-range sensors detected massive fleet movements near the Betelgeuse system. The Vorzak were pulling ships from across their empire, creating the largest armada ever seen. Our spies report over 2,000 warships, Zethtal told the Alliance Defense Council, and they are led by Grand Imperator Drakath himself. A hush fell over the council chamber. Even those who had never encountered the Vorzak knew that name. Drakath was the emperor of the Vorzak, ruler of half the galaxy and architect of countless genocides. Why would their supreme leader come in person? Asked one of the human generals. Because you have done what no one else has done in 3,000 years, Zethtal replied. You have defeated his forces in battle. This has become personal for him. Blackwood studied the tactical displays showing the gathered Vorzak fleet. When will they arrive? 3 months, Zethtal said. Maybe 4 if we're lucky. Then we have work to do, Powell said firmly. The final preparations moved at a frantic pace. Every ship that could fly was made ready for battle. Every weapon that could fire was placed in position. The combined forces of the Alliance numbered just over 500 ships. Impressive, but still outnumbered 4-1 by the approaching Vorzak armada. Blackwood took command of the Intrepid, with Zethtal as his second-in-command. Other ships were commanded by officers from various Alliance species, each bringing their own strengths and knowledge to the fight. 2 days before the expected arrival of the Vorzak fleet, Blackwood called all ship commanders to a final briefing aboard the Intrepid. We know they outnumber us, he told the assembled officers. We know they have more experience in space warfare than most of our species combined, but we have something they don't have. We're fighting for our survival, for our homes, for our families, and we're fighting together, combining our strengths in ways they've never seen before. He looked around the room at the faces of humans, Cedians, Aurelians, Bren, Krell, Navar, and a dozen other species. For too long, they terrorized this galaxy. It's time for that to end. As the commanders returned to their ships, the long-range sensors detected the first sign of the approaching armada. The Vorzak had arrived at the edge of the solar system earlier than expected. Their massive fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, ready for battle. The final confrontation was about to begin. Everything the Alliance had built, everything they had planned, would be tested against the full might of an empire that had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. Powell watched from the command center on Earth as the Vorzak fleet approached. She thought of Commander Harris and the crew of the Horizon, who had given their lives to warn Earth. She thought of Captain Shepard and the brave crew of the Defiant, who had turned the tide in the first battle. This is for all of them, she whispered. The greatest space battle in the history of the galaxy was about to begin. The Vorzak fleet filled the sky above Earth, 2,000 warships strong. Their massive vessels blocked the stars, casting shadows on the planet below. At their center flew the Imperial flagship, 3 times larger than any other ship. Grand Imperator Drakath himself stood on its bridge, his cold eyes fixed on the blue planet. So this is Earth, he said. His voice was deep and harsh. Soon it will be just another dead world. Drakath was old even by Vorzak standards. His gray skin was wrinkled and covered with battle scars. For 2,000 years he had led the Empire's expansion across the galaxy. He had ordered the destruction of hundreds of worlds. Never had he been defeated. The human fleet approaches, Imperator, said his second-in-command. Drakath smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Let them come. This time we are prepared. Admiral Blackwood stood on the bridge of the USS Intrepid, looking at the Vorzak armada on the main screen. Beside him stood Commander Zethtal of the Aurelians and representatives from 6 other alien species. They formed the unified command of the Alliance fleet. They outnumber us 4-1, said Captain Linda Parker, Blackwood's second-in-command. Numbers aren't everything, Blackwood replied. We have surprise on our side. They still don't know all our capabilities. The Alliance fleet formed a defensive line between Earth and the approaching Vorzak ships. 500 vessels of different sizes and designs, built by different species but united in purpose. Behind them, defense stations on the Moon, Mars, and throughout the asteroid belt were fully armed and ready. Blackwood opened a channel to all Alliance ships. This is Admiral Blackwood. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Today we stand not just for Earth, but for every world the Vorzak have destroyed, for every species they've tried to wipe out. Let's show them that the age of their terror is over. The bridge crew cheered, their voices joined by thousands more, across the fleet. Blackwood gave the order that began the greatest space battle in galactic history. All ships, engage the enemy. The Alliance fleet surged forward, their new engines pushing them faster than the Vorzak expected. The front-line ships fired first, their weapons enhanced by combined alien technologies. 20 Vorzak ships exploded before they could even return fire. Drakath watched in anger as the Alliance fleet split into smaller battle groups attacking from multiple directions. They're using Bren attack patterns, he growled. How is this possible? His officers had no answer. The Vorzak had always fought their enemies one species at a time. They had never faced a united force that combined tactics and technologies. From across the galaxy, the battle spread across the solar system. Around Mars, Aurelian ships led by Commander Zethtal engaged the Vorzak left flank. Their special shields absorbed the enemy fire while their weapons tore through Vorzak defenses. Near Jupiter, a group of fast human ships attacked and retreated, drawing Vorzak forces away from their main formation. Bren engineers had enhanced the human engines, making them faster than anything the Vorzak had seen before. But the Vorzak still had the advantage of numbers. For every ship they lost, they could afford to lose 3 more. Slowly, they began to push back against the Alliance forces. On Earth, Colonel Diana Mitchell led the ground defense as Vorzak landing craft broke through in North America and Asia. Her forces included humans, Krell warriors, and Navarre scouts. They fought street by street in cities across the planet. Hold them back, Mitchell ordered her troops as they defended Chicago. Every minute we keep them busy is another minute for our fleet to damage their ships. The fighting in space grew more intense. The USS Intrepid took multiple hits as it led an attack on the Vorzak center formation. Fires broke out on 3 decks. Medical teams rushed to help the wounded. Shields down to 40%, reported Captain Parker. Maintain course, Blackwood ordered. We need to keep pushing toward their command ship. On the Vorzak flagship, Drakath was growing frustrated. The battle was taking too long. His forces should have crushed these primitives hours ago. Target their main defense stations on the Moon, he ordered. Use the planet killer. His weapons officer hesitated. Imperator, the planet killer has never been used this close to our own ships. The energy field could damage our fleet as well. Do it, Drakath shouted. I want this rebellion crushed now. The largest weapon in the Vorzak arsenal began to power up. It could destroy an entire planet, turning it to dust in minutes. Even using it against the Moon would cause massive destruction. In the Alliance command center on Earth, Powell saw the energy readings from the Vorzak flagship. They're charging their main weapon, she warned Blackwood over the communications. Think. If they fire it at the Moon, all our forces there will be destroyed. Blackwood knew they had only one chance. Captain Kelly Russell, this is Admiral Blackwood. Operation Lightning is authorized. Captain Russell commanded the USS Valiant, the newest and fastest ship in the human fleet. She was young for her rank, only 34, with red hair and fierce determination in her green eyes. Her ship carried a special weapon designed by Dr. Winters and Bren engineers. Acknowledged, Admiral, Russell replied. Operation Lightning is go. The Valiant broke away from the main battle, its engines pushing to maximum speed. It flew straight toward the Vorzak flagship, dodging enemy fire. Get us as close as possible, Russell told her pilot. We need to be right on top of them for this to work. The Valiant took heavy damage as it approached the massive Vorzak flagship. Its shields failed. Hull breaches appeared on multiple decks, but still it pressed forward. Ready the pulse cannon, Russell ordered. Target their main weapon system. The pulse cannon was the most powerful weapon ever built by the Alliance. It could fire only once before burning out, but its energy blast could penetrate any known shield. On his flagship, Dracath saw the small human vessel approaching. "Destroy that ship," he ordered. Too late. The Valiant fired its pulse cannon. A blinding beam of energy struck the Vorzak flagship, just as its planet killer was about to fire. The energy release created a chain reaction that tore through the massive ship. Dracath felt his vessel breaking apart around him. For the first time in his long life, he knew fear. "This cannot be happening," he whispered as explosions reached the bridge. The Vorzak flagship exploded in a blast so bright it was visible from Earth's surface. The shockwave damaged dozens of nearby Vorzak ships. Captain Russell and her crew had no time to celebrate their success. The damage to the Valiant was too severe. "All hands abandon ship," she ordered as systems failed around her. Most of the crew made it to escape pods before the Valiant broke apart. Russell was picked up by an Aurelian rescue ship hours later. The destruction of their flagship and the death of Dracath threw the Vorzak forces into confusion. Their rigid chain of command collapsed without its leader. Across the solar system, Vorzak ships began to retreat. After 18 hours of continuous battle, it was over. The surviving Vorzak vessels jumped to light speed, fleeing back toward their empire. In the Alliance Command Center, Powell watched as the enemy ships disappeared from the tactical display. Tears of relief filled her eyes. "We did it," she said. "We actually defeated them." The Alliance had won, but at great cost. Nearly 200 ships destroyed, thousands of lives lost, cities on Earth damaged by the fighting. 2 days later, representatives from all Alliance species gathered in the United Nations building in New York. Much of the city showed battle damage, but the famous hall had survived. Ambassador Reeves addressed the assembled delegates. "Today marks a new chapter in the history of all our peoples. For 3,000 years, the Vorzak Empire terrorized the galaxy. They destroyed worlds, wiped out entire species, and ruled through fear." She paused, looking at the faces of humans and aliens united in victory. "But that era is over. Today we begin a new mission. We will rebuild what was damaged. We will free the world still under Vorzak control, and we will create a galaxy where no empire can ever again threaten the freedom of any species." The room erupted in cheers and applause. Officers and soldiers, who had fought side by side, embraced. Scientists who had worked together to create new technologies shook hands or tentacles or wings. Powell stood with Blackwood at the back of the hall, watching the celebration. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" she asked. The Admiral nodded. "The Vorzak still control half the galaxy. There are still worlds suffering under their rule. Our work is far from over." "Then we'll finish it," Powell said with determination. "Together." As the Alliance celebrated their victory, their sensors detected new ships approaching Earth. But these were not Vorzak vessels. They were refugee ships and diplomatic vessels from dozens more alien civilizations, all coming to join the fight against the empire that had terrorized them for so long. The galaxy was changing. Hope was spreading among the stars. And it had all started because when the Vorzak threatened Earth, humanity had finally responded.